guys, today we're going to be doing Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone Part 3 by J.K. Rowling. We left off on Chapter 2. So we're going to go to Chapter 2, page 18 to page 27. Now let's get to it. Wait, no. 25, yes. Okay, now let's get to it. Nearly 10 years have passed, and the Dursleys have woken up to find their nephew on the front steps of Petite Drive. They could hardly changed at all. The sun rose, and the same tidy front gardens and lit up the number brass floor of Dursley's front door. It crept into their living room, which was almost exactly the same as it had been the night when Mr. Dursley had seen that fateful news report about owls only on photographs, and the mantelpiece really showed how much time had passed. 10 years ago, there had been lots of pictures with what looked like a large pink beach ball wearing different color bonnets, but Dudley Dursley was no longer a baby, and now the photographs showed a large blonde boy riding his first bicycle on a carousel at the fair, playing a computer game with his father, being hugged and kissed by his mother. The room had held no sign for another boy that lived in the house too. Yet Harry Potter was still there, asleep at the moment, but not for long. His aunt Petunia was awake, and it was her shrill voice that made the first noise of the day. Up! Get up! Now! Harry woke with a start. His aunt rapped on the door again. Wait, up! She screeched. Harry heard her walking toward the kitchen, and the sound of the frying pan being put on the stove. He rolled onto his back and tried to remember the dream he has been having. It had been a good one. There had been a flying motorcycle in it, and had a funny feeling he'd had the same dream before. His aunt was back outside the door. Are you up yet? She demanded. Nearly, said Harry. Well, let's get a move on. I want you to look after the bacon, and don't you dare let it burn. I want every perfect thing on Dursley's birthday. Harry groaned. What did you say? His aunt snapped through the door. Nothing. Dursley's birthday. How could I have forgotten? Harry got slowly out of bed and started looking for his socks. He put on a pair slowly under his bed, and after pulling a spider off one of them, put them on. Harry was used to the spiders because the cupboard under the stairs were full of them, and that's where he slept. When he was get dressed, he went down the hall into the kitchen. The table was almost hidden beneath all Dursley's birthday presents. It looked as Dursley got a new computer. He wanted to not mention the second television and racing motorbike. Exactly why Dursley wanted a racing bike was mysterious to Harry, as Dursley was fat and hated exercise, unless, of course, it involved punching someone. Dursley's favorite punching bag was Harry, but he couldn't often catch him. Harry didn't look it, but he was very fast. Perhaps it had something to do with living in the dark cupboard, but Harry had always been small and skinny for his age. He looked even smaller and skinnier than he really was, because all he had was were old clothes of Dudley's, and Dudley's was about 4 times bigger than he was. Harry had a thin face, knobbly knees, black hair, and bright green eyes. He wore round glasses held together of a large Scotch tape because of all times Dudley had punched him on the nose. The only thing Harry liked about his own appearance was a very thin scar on his forehead that was shaped like a lightning bolt of lightning. He had it as long as he could remember. The first question he could ever remember asking his Aunt Petunia was how he got in it. In a car crash when your old parents died, she said. And don't ask questions. Don't ask questions was the first rule for a quiet life with the Dursleys. Uncle Vernon entered the kitchen as Harry was turning over the bacon. "Comb your hair," he barked. By way of the morning greeting. About once a week, Uncle Vernon looked over the top of the newspaper and shouted at Harry needed a haircut. Harry must have had more haircuts than the rest of the boys in his class put together, but named no difference. His hair simply grew that way all over the place. Harry was frying eggs by the time Dudley has arrived in the kitchen with his mother. Dudley looked a lot like Uncle Vernon. He had a large pink face, not much neck, small watery blue eyes, and a thick blonde hair that lay smoothly on his big fat cheek head. Aunt Petunia often said that Dudley looked like a baby angel. Harry often said that Dudley looks like a pig in a wig. Harry put the plates of egg and bacon on the table, which was difficult as there wasn't much room. Dudley, meanwhile, was counting his presents. His face fell. 36, he said, looking up at his mother and father. "That's 2 less than last year." "Darling, you haven't counted Murray's presents. See, it's here under this big one. Mummy and Daddy, all right. 37 then." Going red on the face, Harry, who could see huge Dursley tantrum coming on, began wolfing down his bacon as fast as possible, in case Dudley turned the table over. Aunt Petunia obviously scented danger too, because she said quickly, "And we'll buy you another 2 presents while we're out today. How about Pumpkin? 2 more presents, is that right?" Dudley thought he was for a moment. "I think it looked like hard work." "Finally," she said slowly, "I will have 30. 39, sweetums," said Aunt Petunia. Oh, Dudley sat down heavily and grabbed the nearest parasol. "All right then," Uncle Vernon chuckled. "Little Tikey wants his money worth, just like his father. Onta boy Dudley," he ruffled Dudley's hair. At the moment, the telephone rang, and Aunt Petunia went to answer it while Harry and Uncle Vernon watched Dudley unwrap a racing bike, a video camera, a remote-control airplane, 16 new computer games with a VCR. He was ripping the paper off a gold wristwatch when Aunt Petunia came back from the telephone looking both angry and worried. Bad news, Vernon, she said. Miss Fig broken her leg. She can't take him. She jerked her head in Harry's direction. Dudley's mouth fell in horror, but Harry's heart gave a leap. Every year on Dudley's birthday, his parents took him to a friend out for dinner, to Adventures Park, hamburger restaurants, or the movies. Every year, Harry was left behind with Miss Fig, mad old lady who lives 2 streets away. Harry hated it there. The whole house was filled with cabbage, and Miss Fig made him look at photographs of cat she'd ever owned. Now what? Said Aunt Petunia, looking furiously at Harry as thought he planned. Harry knew he ought to feel sorry. Now Miss Fig broken her leg, but it wasn't easy when he reminded himself that it was a year before that. He had to look at Tibble, Snowy, Mr. Paws, and Tufty again. We couldn't find Marge, Uncle Vernon suggested. Don't be silly, Vern. She hates the boy. Uncle Dudley often spoke to Harry like this, as though he wasn't there, or rather, he thought there was something very nasty she couldn't understand them, like a slug. What about your friend Vanny? On vacation in Marika, snapped Aunt Petunia. You could just leave me here, Harry put in hopefully. He'd be able to watch, and he wanted, on television stations, maybe even go through Dudley's computer. Aunt Petunia looked as she swallowed a lemon. And come back and find the house in ruins, she snarled. I won't blow away the house. But they weren't listening. I suppose we could leave him take him to the zoo and leave him in the car. That car's new. He's not sitting in it alone. Dudley began to cry. In fact, he wasn't really crying. It had just been years he's really cried, but he knew if he screwed his face and wailed, his mother would give him anything he wanted. Dinky Dums, don't cry. Mommy won't let him spoil your special day, she cried, flinging her arms around him. I don't want you to. Come, Dudley yelled. Being huge pretends sobs and away spoils everything. He shot Harry a nasty grin, the gap in his mother's hands. Just then the doorbell rang. Oh, good Lord, they're here, said Aunt Petunia, frantic. A moment later, Dudley's best friend, Piers Pocus, walked in with her mother. Piers was a scrawny boy with a face like a rat. He was usually the one who held people's arms behind their backs while Dudley hit them. Dudley stopped, pretended to cry at once. Half an hour later, Harry couldn't believe his luck. Was sitting in the back of Dudley's car with the Pipers and Dudley on the way to the zoo for the first time in his life. His aunt and uncle had been able to think of anything else to do, but before they left, Uncle Vernon had taken Harry aside. "I'm warning you," he said, putting a large purple face. "I'm warning you," he said, putting a large purple face right close to Harry's. "I'm warning you, boy. Any funny business, anything at all, and you'll be in that cupboard from now until Christmas." "I'm not going to do anything," said Harry honestly. But Uncle Vernon didn't believe him. He believed no one. The problem was strange. Things often happened around Harry, and it was no telling he didn't make them happen. Once Aunt Petunia tried of Harry coming back from the barber's looking as though he hadn't been at all. He had taken a pair of kitchen scissors to cut his hair so short he was almost bald except for his bangs, which he left to hide the horrible scar. Dudley had laughed himself silly at Harry, who spent a sleepless night imagining school the next day, where he was already left for his badge closed and taped glasses. Next morning, however, he had gotten up his hair exactly as it was before Aunt Petunia had sweared it off. He had been given in a cupboard for a week, even though he had tried to explain, and he couldn't explain how it had grown back so quickly. Another time, Aunt Petunia had been trying to force him into a resolution old sweater of Dudley's, brown and orange puffballs. Harder she tried to pull it over his head, and smaller it seemed to come, until finally it had fit in a hand puppet, but certainly wouldn't fit Harry. Aunt Petunia decided it must have shrunk in the wash, and to this great relief, Harry wasn't published. On the other hand, he had gotten into a terrible trouble for being found on the roof of the school kitchens. Dudley's gang had been chasing him as usual. As much as a surprise as anyone else, he was sitting on the chimney. The Dudsleys had received an angry letter from Harry's headmistress telling them Harry had been climbing school buildings, and all he tried to do as he was shouted at Uncle Vernon thought the locked door of his cupboard was jump behind the big trash cans outside the kitchen doors. Harry supposed to be the wind that caught him in the mid-jump, but nothing was going to go wrong. It was even worse because Dudley and Pipers would spend the day somewhere that wasn't school, in his cupboard or Miss Fig's cabbage-smelling living room. While he drove, Uncle Vernon complained to Aunt Petunia he liked to complain about things. People, work, Harry the council, Harry the bank. Harry was just few of his favorite subjects. This morning it was bicycles roaring like maniacs on the hoodlums, he said. As the motorcycle overtook them, "I had a dream about a motorcycle," said Harry, remembering something. "It was flying." Uncle Vernon nearly crashed the car in front. He turned right and yelled at Harry in his face, a gigantic beat with his mustache. "Motorcycles don't fly!" Dudley and Piers sniggered. "I hope you like that I hope you like part 3. Remember, if you want to go part 4, you should like, subscribe, and turn on those notifications. Bye!